It's not, it's not easy, you know. It still hurts me every day that my daughter's not here with us. I mean, there's no way I can explain what that feels like to
I
you.
was the 14-year-old kid that was involved in this case. I was frozen, I was stuck. You know, I couldn't do nothing, you know, but still, I would want to express that I'm sorry for what happened, but I can't take it back.
A city park, a set of railroad tracks, a shortcut two friends had walked 100 times before. On one night in the summer of 1993, that shortcut placed two teenage girls from Houston, Texas, in the path of six young men finishing a gang initiation ceremony. Within days, their disappearance would trigger one of the largest volunteer searches in the city's history. Within a week, an anonymous phone call to a tip line would break the case wide open. And within 15 years, this single investigation would reach the United States Supreme Court, involve the International Court of Justice at The Hague, and permanently change how the state of Texas treats the families of murder victims. This is the case file of the Black and White Gang. How a Houston Police Department task force, a set of forensic scientists, and a Crime Stoppers hotline turned a missing persons report into one of the most thoroughly documented gang prosecutions in Texas history. I'm your host, and this is Cold Justice. Before we begin, if you're new here, welcome. Cold Justice is a research-based documentary channel covering real criminal cases from across the United States, built entirely on court records, law enforcement statements, and verified public reporting. We don't dramatize, we document. If that's the kind of true crime you're looking for, hit subscribe, tap the like button, and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. It helps this channel keep doing this work. Now, the case file. Houston, Texas, in the early 1990s was a city of roughly 1.7 million people, and like many major American cities of that era, it was contending with a documented rise in youth gang activity. Law enforcement agencies across Harris County had, by the start of the decade, identified dozens of loosely organized neighborhood gangs, many concentrated in specific residential pockets rather than citywide networks. One of these groups called itself the Black and White Gang, based in the Oak Forest and Houston Heights area in the northwest part of the city. Court records and post-conviction reporting described the group as a loosely structured set of teenagers and young adults, most of them known to one another through family or neighborhood ties, rather than a large or hierarchical criminal organization. Membership at the time of the offense central to this case included 6 individuals, ranging in age from 14 to 18. The eldest and de facto leader of the group was an 18-year-old named Peter Anthony Cantu. Court documents from his later trial describe him as having a prior criminal record, including a separate conviction for aggravated assault stemming from an incident earlier that same year. The other members involved in the events of this case were 18-year-old Jose Ernesto Medellin, his 14-year-old brother Venancio Medellin, 17-year-old Efren Perez, 18-year-old Derek Sean O'Brien, and 17-year-old Raul Omar Villarreal. 2 additional individuals, brothers Roman and Frank Sandoval, were present for part of the evening but were not charged in connection with the deaths that followed. Their involvement was limited to the earlier portion of the night, according to trial testimony. Gang initiation rituals of this kind were, according to law enforcement gang unit testimony from the period, a documented practice among small Houston area gangs, physical hazing rather than any act directed at an outside party. On the night in question, the 6+ members had gathered at TC Jester Park, a public green space that runs alongside White Oak Bayou in northwest Houston, for exactly that purpose: the initiation of 17-year-old Raul Villarreal into the group. It's important to establish this context clearly, because what happened next did not begin as an act directed at anyone outside the group. It became something else entirely due to circumstance, 2 teenage girls choosing, on one ordinary night, to walk home a slightly different way. Jennifer Lee Ertman was 14 years old. Elizabeth Christine Pena was 16. Both attended Waltrip High School in Houston, and both had grown up as close friends in the same neighborhood. On the evening of June the 24th, 1993, the 2 girls attended a birthday gathering at a friend's apartment, within walking distance of the Pena family home. According to family and friend accounts given to investigators and later to media outlets, the girls left the gathering at approximately 11:15 in the evening, aiming to make it home before a midnight curfew. Rather than walking the longer route along the main road, which passed a sexually oriented business the girls reportedly preferred to avoid, the two chose a shortcut. That shortcut ran along a set of railroad tracks and through T.C. Jester Park, the same park where the Black and White Gang's initiation ceremony was taking place that night. According to trial testimony and subsequent court filings, the girls encountered members of the group as they crossed through the park. What followed formed the basis of capital murder, aggravated kidnapping, and aggravated sexual assault charges against all 6 individuals present. Consistent with our editorial standards on victim-related content, we will not detail the specific acts committed against Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena. What can be stated, based on the trial record, is this: both girls were killed that night, and the state's case, supported by forensic evidence and multiple confessions, established that all 6 individuals present participated in their deaths. Neither girl returned home that night. Their families would not know their fate for 4 more days. The following morning, when neither Jennifer nor Elizabeth returned home, both families began independent efforts to locate them. This was in 1993, well before cell phones were standard among teenagers, meaning there was no digital trail to follow and no way to reach the girls directly. Within hours, the Ertman and Pena families, along with friends, neighbors, and members of the local community, organized a search effort that would grow to include hundreds of volunteers over the following days. Flyers bearing photographs of both girls were distributed throughout the surrounding neighborhoods. Local vendors reportedly inserted the flyers into newspapers being sold on street corners, extending their reach well beyond word of mouth. The Houston Police Department opened a missing persons investigation the same day the families reported the girls missing. Given the girls' ages, the established travel pattern between the party and their homes, and the fact that neither had a history of running away, investigators treated the case as a high-priority matter from its earliest hours, a decision that would prove consistent with what detectives eventually determined had occurred. For 4 days, the case remained unresolved. Searchers combed the area around the park and the bayou. Detectives interviewed friends who had last seen the girls at the party, but the specific location of Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena remained unknown until an anonymous phone call changed the direction of the investigation entirely. On June the 27th, 1993, 3 days after the girls went missing, an individual identifying himself only as Gonzalez called the Houston Area Crime Stoppers tip line. The caller stated that the bodies of the 2 missing girls could be found in White Oak Bayou, within T.C. Jester Park. Crime Stoppers tip lines, for viewers unfamiliar with the system, operate on a model of guaranteed anonymity paired with a cash reward, specifically designed to lower the barrier for individuals with knowledge of a crime, including those close to the people involved, to come forward without fear of direct retaliation or immediate exposure. In this case, that system functioned exactly as intended. It produced a specific, actionable location from someone who had knowledge investigators did not yet possess. Police responded to the tip and recovered the remains of both girls from the location described by the caller. The recovery effort was documented by the Harris County Medical Examiner's Office, which subsequently conducted post-mortem examinations to establish the manner and cause of death for both victims. Consistent with our standards, we are not detailing physical findings beyond what is necessary to establish the forensic basis for the prosecution's case. The medical examiner's office determined that both girls had died from asphyxiation caused by strangulation, a finding that would later be presented as forensic testimony at trial. With remains recovered, the investigation shifted from a missing persons case to a double homicide investigation, and detectives now had a critical new lead. Someone close to the perpetrators had known enough to identify the exact location of the bodies before any public announcement had been made. That fact alone told investigators the tip almost certainly came from someone with direct knowledge of the individuals responsible, not a stranger reporting a coincidental discovery. Investigators began working to trace the anonymous call, using a combination of voice analysis, call pattern review, and, most significantly, old-fashioned interview work within the neighborhood where the girls had last been seen. That work led detectives to a Houston Heights resident named Joe Cantu, the older brother of Peter Cantu, who did not live with the gang but shared a residence with him. According to statements Joe Cantu later provided to prosecutors, he and his wife had been at home on the night of June the 24th when his younger brother returned with a group of male companions. Joe Cantu told investigators that the group's behavior that night, combined with items in their possession, raised concerns serious enough that he ultimately placed the anonymous call to Crime Stoppers himself. Detectives interviewed Joe Cantu formally once his identity as the informant was established. His account gave investigators the names of the individuals who had been present at the residence that night, along with a description of items, jewelry belonging to the victims, that several of the young men had reportedly brought back with them. This information gave the Houston Police Department the specific individuals to pursue as suspects, moving the case from an unidentified perpetrator investigation to a targeted one within days of the remains being recovered. This sequence illustrates a recurring pattern in gang-related homicide investigations. Cases are frequently broken not through forensic evidence alone, but through information from individuals inside or adjacent to the group, often family members, who come forward once the weight of what occurred becomes evident to them. In this case, that individual was the brother of the group's own leader. Working from the information provided by Joe Cantu, Houston Police Department detectives identified and located the 6 individuals connected to the case: Peter Cantu, Jose Medellin, Venancio Medellin, Efren Perez, Derek O'Brien, and Raul Villarreal. All 6 were taken into custody within days of the remains being recovered. Each individual was interviewed separately by investigators, following standard procedure for multi-defendant cases, separating suspects to prevent coordinated accounts and to allow detectives to compare statements for consistency and discrepancy. According to court records, several of the 6 provided statements to police that acknowledged their presence at the scene and described the sequence of events from their individual perspectives. These statements, obtained through standard interrogation procedure with legal advisements given as required, became central pieces of evidence in the prosecutions that followed. Physical evidence recovered during the investigation included items identified as belonging to the victims, which were traced back to individuals within the group, consistent with the account Joe Cantu had provided regarding possessions brought back to the residence on the night of the offense. Investigators also gathered forensic evidence from the scene at TC Jester Park, correlating physical trace evidence with the statements provided by those in custody. Given the number of defendants and the severity of the charges, prosecutors from the Harris County District Attorney's Office made the decision to try each of the 6 individuals separately, rather than jointly, a common approach in multi-defendant capital cases, intended to allow evidence specific to each defendant's role to be evaluated on its own merits, and to avoid complications that can arise when co-defendants' statements implicate one another in a single joint proceeding. Between 1994 and 1995, the 6 defendants faced separate capital murder trials in Harris County. Each proceeding drew substantial media attention, both for the number of defendants involved and for the age range represented, from a 14-year-old to 2 18-year-olds, all charged in connection with the same set of events. Prosecutor Marie Munier, representing the Harris County District Attorney's Office, led the prosecution efforts across these proceedings. The state's case in each trial relied on a combination of forensic evidence from the medical examiner's office, physical evidence connecting defendants to items belonging to the victims, and the statements defendants had given to investigators following their arrests. Testimony from Sergeant Todd Miller of the Houston Police Department detailed the investigative process, including the recovery of evidence and the sequence of events following the anonymous tip. The defense in each case varied according to the specific defendant's role and age. For Venancio Medellin, then 14 at the time of the offense, his age at the time of the crime became a central factor in both his defense strategy and in the eventual sentencing outcome, given the legal constraints on capital punishment for offenders who were minors at the time an offense occurred. For the 5 other defendants, all 17 or 18 at the time of the offense, capital murder charges carried the possibility of a death sentence under Texas law as it existed at the time. Each trial proceeded through the standard phases of Texas capital litigation, a guilt-innocence phase, in which jurors evaluated the evidence to determine whether the state had proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt, followed in the cases of defendants found guilty of capital murder by a separate punishment phase, in which jurors considered aggravating and mitigating factors to determine an appropriate sentence. All 6 defendants were ultimately convicted in connection with the events of June 24, 1993, though the specific charges, verdicts, and sentences varied by individual, reflecting differences in age, role, and legal eligibility for capital punishment. Peter Cantu, Jose Medellin, and Derek O'Brien, the 3 eldest defendants, each 18 at the time of the offense, were convicted of capital murder and sentenced to death. Efrain Perez and Raul Villarreal, both 17 at the time of the offense, were also convicted of capital murder and initially sentenced to death. However, their sentences were later commuted to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after a specified minimum term. Following a change in constitutional interpretation regarding the application of the death penalty to offenders who were under 18 at the time of their crimes, Venancio Medellin, 14 at the time of the offense, was tried separately given his status as a minor under Texas juvenile and criminal statutes, and received a sentence of 40 years imprisonment. This divergence in outcomes for individuals convicted in connection with the same set of events illustrates a point of ongoing significance in American capital litigation. Sentencing in group offenses is not applied uniformly across co-defendants, but is shaped substantially by each individual's age at the time of the offense, their specific role in the events, and evolving constitutional standards regarding who may lawfully be sentenced to death. What distinguishes this case from many others in Texas legal history is the path one of the defendants' appeals took, a path that extended well beyond Harris County, beyond the Texas court system, and ultimately to an international tribunal. Jose Medellin, one of the 3 defendants sentenced to death, was a Mexican national. Following his conviction, his legal team raised a claim under the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, an international treaty to which the United States is a party. The treaty requires that when a foreign national is arrested, local authorities notify that individual's consulate so that consular officials may offer assistance. Medellin's defense argued that Houston authorities had not provided this notification at the time of his arrest, and that this failure constituted a violation of his treaty rights. This claim, along with similar claims from other Mexican nationals on death row across the United States, was brought before the International Court of Justice at The Hague by the government of Mexico, in a proceeding that became known as the Avena case. In 2004, the International Court of Justice ruled that the United States had violated the Vienna Convention in the cases of numerous Mexican nationals, including Medellin, and directed that these individuals receive judicial review of their convictions and sentences to determine whether the treaty violation had affected the outcome of their cases. This ruling set up a significant constitutional question within the United States legal system. Could an international court's ruling compel a state court, specifically a Texas court, to reopen a case, absent implementing legislation from the United States Congress? This question reached the United States Supreme Court in the case of Medellin versus Texas, decided in 2008. The Supreme Court ruled, in a decision authored by Chief Justice John Roberts, that while the Avena ruling and the underlying treaty obligations were binding on the United States as a matter of international law, they were not automatically enforceable as domestic law within individual states absent implementing legislation from Congress. As a result, Texas was not constitutionally required to give effect to the International Court of Justice's ruling in Medellin's case, and his conviction and sentence stood. This case remains a frequently cited precedent in American constitutional law courses on the relationship between international treaty obligations and domestic legal enforcement. And it is a significant reason this particular Texas case is studied well beyond true crime circles, appearing in law school curricula addressing separation of powers and the domestic status of international law. Following the exhaustion of appeals, including the Supreme Court's ruling in Medellin versus Texas, 3 of the 6 defendants were executed by the state of Texas. Jose Medellin was executed on August 5, 2008, at the Huntsville unit, following the Supreme Court's decision earlier that year. Derek O'Brien was executed on July 11, 2006. Peter Cantu, identified throughout the case as the group's leader, was executed on February 16, 2010. the last of the three to be put to death in connection with this case. Media accounts from his execution noted that, at the time he was put to death, Kendo had spent more time on death row than either of his victims had been alive. Efren Perez and Raul Villarreal remain incarcerated, serving life sentences following the commutation of their original death sentences, and have periodically appeared before the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles for parole consideration in the years since. Venancio Medellin, the youngest defendant, has likewise appeared before the parole board multiple times since becoming eligible. As of recent reporting, his requests for parole have been denied on each occasion, with the Harris County District Attorney's Office formally opposing his release. For the Ertman and Pena families, the resolution of this case unfolded across more than 15 years, from the initial disappearance in 1993 to the final execution in 2010. Family members, including Jennifer Ertman's father, Randy Ertman, attended each of the three executions as witnesses, a role made possible by a specific change in Texas law that this case itself helped bring about. Prior to this case, Texas law placed restrictions on which family members of a murder victim were permitted to witness an execution. The Ertman and Pena families' advocacy, following their direct experience with the criminal justice process in this case, contributed to legislative changes expanding the categories of victims' family members legally permitted to serve as witnesses at executions carried out by the state of Texas. This legislative outcome reflects a broader pattern seen across a number of high-profile Texas cases. Prosecutions of significant public interest have, at various points, directly informed changes to victims' rights statutes, giving families of victims a more defined legal role in the post-conviction and execution process than had previously existed under Texas law. The case also remains a frequently referenced example within discussions of gang-related juvenile and young adult offending in Texas, illustrating how initiation practices within loosely organized groups, intended, by the participant's own account, as an internal ritual, can escalate into circumstances involving individuals entirely unconnected to the group, with consequences extending across decades and, in this instance, across international legal systems. The case of the Black and White Gang remains one of the most extensively litigated criminal matters in Texas history. A single set of events from one night in 1993 that produced 6 separate criminal trials, 3 executions, 1 commutation, a ruling from the International Court of Justice, and a United States Supreme Court decision that is still taught in law schools today. It stands as a documented example of how a Crime Stoppers tip line, forensic pathology, and methodical detective work were able to resolve a case that began with almost no leads, and how the legal aftermath of a single Texas prosecution can extend into international law and permanently reshape state legislation. If you found this case file informative, let me know in the comments which state or case you'd like to see covered next. Hit like if you appreciate research-based true crime content, and subscribe to Cold Justice so you don't miss the next case file. Thank you for watching.